What's up, y'all? We are excited to be back. We're going to start today in the book, page 103. Everybody get there. There is a question on page 103 that I'm just obsessed with. It's such a fun one. You ready for it?
Can't wait.
Okay, here's the question. It says, what's the most focused you've ever been on something in your life? What did that look like? Describe it in detail.
When I think about that question, I think about like 2 weeks ago. And it was a Friday night and we were all hanging out, all us and our friends. And someone was like, hey, let's play this game. And it's the type of game where you all are on the same team and you're playing against the game, trying to win. And we like started playing and we were on like level 1 and we were like kind of into it. But like halfway through, all of us were like, we're beating this whole game. Like, we were about to dedicate our night to this. And from then on out, like, that was all we could think about. Like, we were so zoned in on the game that, like, people would yell at you if you got your phone out because, like, you weren't focused enough. Like, we were dedicating our lives to winning that game. Nothing else mattered.
It was serious.
It was so serious. It was so serious. And finally, we beat the game, and we were, like, all cheering and celebrating. And we, like, look at the time, and it had been, like, 4 hours that we had played that game. And it felt like 10 minutes, okay? And then we started laughing so hard because we were like, we didn't even remember we had phones by the time we were on like level 10. Like, it didn't even matter what was happening on our phones. There was like other people in the room, couldn't have cared less. What were they talking about? No idea, didn't matter to us. And even like after we beat the game, we still were talking about the game because we had just dedicated all our entire focus to it for so long. And that's the time.
And that's exactly what God is asking us to do. When he tells us to have our eyes single to his glory, he's asking us to focus in that kind of way, but not on some random game, not on sports, not on your future. He's asking us to focus on him and on his glory and on his work. And I really think something so special happens when we do that in our lives. And there's this elder on my mission. He was from Wyoming and he just was a good farm boy. My favorite kind of people, just a good farm boy. And I remember there was this day that we were walking. It was super rainy in this area we were in. And there was this puddle on the ground. He said, Elder Savage, what's that puddle doing there? And I was like, nothing. And he said, exactly. It's not doing anything. And I was like, yeah. And he said, but what can a river do? And I was like, I don't really know. He said, a river can carve through rocks. It can carve through mountains. It can create valleys. He said, a river is unstoppable. And he said, Elder Savage, we are water. And I was like, yeah, we are water. And he said, if you're not focused, if you don't have a focused direction that you're going, you are like a puddle sitting there not doing anything. He said, but if you get focused in a direction, you will be like a river and you will become unstoppable.
And it's interesting because I think all of us do want to be that type of missionary, even that type of person. We don't like want to sit around doing nothing. We want to be the type of person that makes a difference. And I had that intention when I got on my mission. I knew I wanted to be that person, but I got on my mission in my very first transfer. My first few months there was like Christmas time, and it was my first
That's
Christmas.
such a hard time to be. That's an easy time to be distracted.
Yeah, that's brutal. It was like my first Christmas ever away from my family. And also I was on my mission. It was such a different environment. And when you get on your mission, you obviously have all sorts of new rules. And one of the rules you get is called safeguards for technology. And it's all about the rules of using your phone. And it's like, don't take your phone in the bathroom. Don't like go on your email during the day. Always tell your companion what you're doing on your phone. Make sure they can see your screen. All things with the intention of keeping your focus on missionary work. Because even your phone, the goal of your phone is to help you be a missionary, not to distract you from being a missionary. And when I heard the rules, I thought they were so stupid. I'm just going to be 100% honest. I was like, it's not that big of a deal. That's what I kept thinking. It's not that big of a deal. I'm missing Christmas. Like, it's not that big of a deal if I check my email and like read what my mom sent me during the day. Like, that's not going to ruin my day as a missionary. It's not going to be that big of a deal if I'm doing something and not telling my companion because it doesn't matter in the end. I just kept thinking that. And I went for like a couple months kind of doing that secretly. Like, I was just like not really caring about like checking my email, reading what everyone's doing, keeping up with everything going on at home. And finally there was this one day randomly that I just woke up and I was like, I wonder what would happen today if I actually like focused only on my mission. If I didn't care about my emails, if I stopped looking at my email during the day, if I really truly gave 100% of my focus, not to home, not to Christmas at home, but to my mission. And I woke up and I was like, okay, I'm going to do it today. I'm going to give it one day and I'm going to see what's different on my mission if I really follow that 100%. And I lived that day and it was I am not even kidding you, the most miraculous day of my entire life. And there was not a second of that day that I was worried about what my family was doing for their Christmas traditions. There wasn't a second of that day that I felt sad that I wasn't home for Christmas. It was all I could think about because God was giving me miracle after miracle after miracle after miracle, more than I even knew was possible. And time went by faster. I didn't care about anything that was unimportant. I was just experiencing the marvelous work of God. And I was looking through my journal from that day and I was reading it. And the first line of my journal that day was, I wish that I could relive today over and over for the rest of forever. And then I just start describing, like you can see, like I just legit start describing.
Grace has the coolest journals,
I
y'all. These are
described
amazing.
every miracle that we experienced that day over in as much detail as I possibly could. And randomly in the middle of that day, I just wrote, also, I forgot that in morning studies I was thinking about safeguards. And I decided to not even let it be a temptation, to give it no thoughts. And I know today happened because I decided to do that. And I just think that if you really want to experience the fullness of God's marvelous work, you can only experience it if you're giving it every ounce of your focus.
And I think you're going to realize when you go on a mission that there's actually a lot of missionaries that are pretty distracted, that are caught up in things at home or are missing things at home or are so excited for the things they're going to do after the mission. And that's normal. I think that's human.
Well, because there's so many other things to think about. Let's be so honest.
Yes.
Like you can make a list of all of the things that you're far away from, that you miss, that you don't have anymore, that you just are like, oh, like I just want to think about it for 5 minutes because it makes me feel like comfort because how it used to be my comfort thing.
Yes. But I think what Grace is saying is so good because when you make that decision of I'm going to have my eye single, I'm going to fully focus on what I'm doing right now, I'm going to fully focus on the Lord's work, you start to see the greatest miracles. You start to see the work at its fullest potential. And there is someone that I've always been obsessed with in the scriptures. It's Captain Moroni. And I want to read a verse about him. It's in Alma chapter 48, verse 17. And everybody go there with me. Alma 48, 17. If you've heard this verse, you love this verse. If you haven't heard this verse, you're going to love this verse. This is what it says. This is the way it describes Captain Moroni. It says, if all men had been and were and ever would be like unto Moroni, behold, the very powers of hell would have been shaken forever. Yea, the devil would never have power over the hearts of the children of men. And I remember there was a point in my mission that I was thinking about that verse, and I was like, what was it about Moroni that made it so Satan couldn't touch him? Like he was living in a way that the temptations, they just didn't even come close to him. And there was weeks that I was just obsessing over it. And I was studying every single line, every verse that I could find that talked about Moroni to figure out what was it. I was pondering it.
That's a good study. That's how you know it's a good study.
It is.
It's like, wait, no, like I need to find every single part of the scripture.
And when you're thinking about it throughout the day, like I literally throughout the whole day, I'm like, what is it? Like there has to be an answer to why it was that Satan had no power over him. And then I still remember the day and I found this verse. Go with me. It's Alma chapter 60. In Alma chapter 60, it's the very last verse of this chapter, verse 36. Moroni's ending a letter, and this is what he says, and I think it's why Satan had no power over him. He says, behold, I am Moroni, your chief captain. I seek not for power, but to pull it down. And then this part. Are you ready for this? This part is so good. He says, I seek not for the honor of the world, but for the glory of my God. And I read that verse, and all of a sudden I realized Moroni didn't care what other people thought. He wasn't worried about what they wanted him to do. He wasn't worried about impressing anyone, which, to be honest, I think we go out on missions and you hear about great missionaries and you're like, I want to be a great missionary. I want to impress people. I want to make people proud. Moroni didn't care about that. All he cared about was God's glory. That was his whole focus. It didn't matter what anybody else thought. And I read that verse and I was like, that's what I need to do. I need to stop worrying about what my family is going to think or if they're going to be impressed or if my companion is going to be impressed. And I started thinking, what is God's glory? He tells us, have your eyes single to my glory. I'm like, what is that? What even is his glory? What am I supposed to be so completely focused on? And then a verse came to my mind. It's in Moses. If you go to Moses with me, it's Moses chapter 1. And he just tells us, he says, this is my work, this is my glory. Moses 1:39, he says, this is my work and my glory to bring to pass the immortality and eternal life of man. And I love that God teaches us in this verse, my only focus, my work, my glory, what I celebrate, what I find joy in, is helping my kids reach their greatest potential. And I want you to be a part of that with me. And I think sometimes we're like, yeah, when I get on my mission, I'm gonna focus. You don't have to wait for your mission to start getting invested in people.
God's mission isn't 18 months or 2 years long.
Yeah.
That verse isn't only applicable for 18 months or 2 years. That is an eternal verse.
Yeah. And I just have experienced having 100% of my focus on his work. And it's the sweetest thing I've ever experienced. I can say that with all the confidence in the world. When you get rid of distractions, when you stop worrying about other things, when you stop worrying about impressing people and you lock in on God's work, you will experience life to its fullest.
Well, and I think it's interesting because if you go back to that dumb game that I was playing a couple weeks ago, I actually don't think we would have had as much fun if half the time we were having phone time and like people were scrolling and checking on things. I don't think time would have gone by as quickly if we were trying to be part of the conversations that were happening on the side. I don't think we would have walked away as happy as we were when we beat that game if like half the time we were invested and half the time we weren't. And I think that if you want to experience the work of God in its most marvelous form, it's exactly like that.
Yeah.
Give it your 100% focus. Don't worry about what anyone else is doing around you. Even on your mission, even at home, 100% focus to helping God's kids. If you want to experience the fullness of a mission, it is not about worrying about what's going on your phone. That's going to distract you from how exciting and thrilling God's marvelous work is.
Okay, and you might feel like you're not this kind of person right now, and that's okay. This is something that takes practice. And we've been trying to share ideas of how you can become that person more and more. There are so many examples in the scriptures of how you can become this person. We tried to highlight some of our favorite examples in this book. And I want to take you to a page right now. Go to page 125 in the book, because it gives you some questions to reflect on that will also help you become that person. First question says, which missionary do you most relate with in this section and why? I want you to look at the examples in this section and really think, who do you most resonate with? Who can you most learn from in that section? The next question says, what do you know about God that motivates you to focus on his work? And I think that question's so important. I had coaches that I played for that I would have given everything for. And then I had other coaches that I didn't want to do a thing they said. And so the more you learn about God, the more it's going to motivate you to be focused on his work. The last question says, what step can you take today to have your eye more single to his glory? And that's our biggest hope from this episode, is that you can start taking steps right now that will help you become the missionary that has your eye single to God's glory.
And this is our call to action. We want you to focus on God's work. And remember, God's work is people. Focus on them. And I know that as you do, you'll experience a day like I did in my journal, and you'll leave and you'll say, I want to live today over and over and over again for the rest of forever. We'll see you next time, all four of us together, as we conclude and we look back on what we've learned and the vision that we have caught together of what it looks like to be a Doctrine and Covenants 4 missionary.